We do have a 6th grade meta update to get to for today. Boom. There wasn't a tournament last month because the class failed to meet their goals with schoolwork progress. You hate to see it. These damn kids, you know, my parents always had a rule when I was a kid. They didn't care how much video games I played or like whatever other hobby I wanted to do at all, as long as my grades were good. There was much griping and moaning and gnashing of teeth, but I still have to actually do my job. No, it's so true. This is a good teacher. I had teachers like this too, where my wrestling coach, there would be days where we go to like the computer lab and we would all play Halo together. That was like sick. And if your grades were bad, instead you would go running for 2 hours. There was nearly no tournament this month either, but it's the holidays, so I'm cutting them some slack this time. This tournament was largely kind of what you'd expect, considering they basically taken a whole month off from the game. A whole month for a game you've never played before, it like might as well be brand new almost. That is so long. The kid who wants to keep changing characters stuck with Chip this time and managed to take a round off the Ukrainian Potemkin. I hope that kid sticks it out with Chip. That's a tough long-term investment. Abba still hasn't won a round, but continues to insist that Abba is top tier. We all know these people. I know the person, my best friend growing up, and he's still like this, by the way. Constantly change characters. Every time I see him, he has a new character. He's like, nah, dude, this character speaks to my soul. Like, if there was a me in a character, it would be this character. And then I see him like 3 days later and he's like, I'm playing this character now. Everybody knows the person who is like, nah, bro, my character is broken. Check out this sick left, right, X, Y setup. That's so doink. And then they're like, dude, but you can just beat it by existing. And they're like, yeah, I know. Isn't this character awesome? Axel is still learning how to move around while poking. Mini Faust still took it from the Ukrainian Potemkin in the end and had to fight me. She's still trying to get her sea legs in the mirror match. Understandable. Faust is weird because he's a really easy character to play, but he's also a really hard character to play. He's like very simple in terms of like you hit his good buttons and you throw these items, but he's like a really unnatural character to play. So much of his game plan is like reacting to item toss, and a lot of his normals are really weird, particularly in like plus R, how his 2K works and his 2S. And it's not like he can just do a Gatling series. He wants to fish with like 2P, 2H and stuff. His Gatlings are extremely unnatural. With the specific events of the tournament being so bland and predictable, I thought it would be worthwhile to take stock of where the kids are compared to the beginning of the year. People need to be good at doing this for themselves too. You know that a lot of people you play with, they can improve so much and just not recognize it. Blocking is no longer for cowards. It is a big step to start suddenly just being like, you know what? Maybe this blocking is not so bad. This sounds like a stupid thing to note, but if you've played with children before, it's not children. You know how many grown adults don't block? Like almost all of them. Legit. They pull out the controller. They're like, fighting games? Yeah, I love fighting games. Oh man, this genre is so fun. Almost had him. Holy shit. You're gonna hurt yourself. What if you just hit the attack button when they get near you? And they're like, nah, I love fighting games. It's one of my favorite genres. I play them once every 6 years. That's just what they do. I don't know why, but it's like they think fighting games are like Devil May Cry. And they're like, if you mash really fast, you'll get a sick combo and it'll say smoking sick style. It doesn't happen. Even the kids that literally just roll their fingers across the buttons while playing Soul or Order Soul will block now. Spacing is a thing now. The pure 6H Potemkin is not around anymore. He's become obsolete. Even the kids that use 6H as the centerpiece of their gameplay use things like 5P and try to backdash to make some space to actually use 6H now. People try to hang around outside of 6H range and bait it out. Axel in particular is trying to learn to better leverage his buttons and learn how to escape when somebody gets in. A concept that's difficult to acquire. Where should I stand? I think almost constantly when you play fighting games, it's maybe not even conscious, but you should always be trying to figure out where the best place for your character to stand is and where the best place for your opponent's character to stand is and why. When you're sitting there thinking to yourself, where does my opponent want to be? How are they going to try to pull me out of that range or put themselves in their best range? That will make you already probably better. You could be completely wrong about the right range, but like just thinking about where to stand, you're already starting to like formulate a game plan sort of on accident. It takes people a long time to get sometimes. Like, you know, you don't know. That's like a lot of people. I send it with my best options, and if it doesn't work, their character is broken. And if I win, it's a skill issue and they're bad, you know? Figuring out where you want to be, knowing how far your moves go, comes from experience and understanding what your character's biggest win condition is. So like when you think of Axel, your first thought is, he wants to be as far away as possible. Then you kind of realize like, well, actually, his 2H and like his 5P and all of his best pokes that lead to stuff don't actually really reach from full screen. His best anti-airs and like all of his stuff is about 60 to 70% of the screen away. Even just thinking about that, you kind of understand Axel's blind spots, right? The spots on the screen where he can't attack as consistently. If you play Mei, for instance, her 2S and far slash are really good at about a quarter of the screen, and then Dolphin goes about half screen. Her jump lets her jump in and then threaten air dash or empty jumps or air dash backs from about 60% of the screen. So depending on whether the matchup, whether your opponent has good anti-airs or not, whether your opponent has good pokes, whether your opponent has something good to stuff Dolphin, all of those different tools are better or worse depending on the matchup. And you want to try to be in a range to use each of them depending on what your current plan of attack is, right? Little bits of distance is important because a lot of matchups can feel stifling if you're a little too close. But if you're like slightly farther, suddenly your character feels so much better than theirs. If you're a little bit farther than that, suddenly their character feels much better. And like, knowing those little ranges is not easy. The kids are not like masters of this, right? But they just know sometimes I want to be closer, sometimes I want to be farther, right? And that's already the step. The next step is movement is developing, but needs a lot of work. We've come a good way from the early days of not even running forward, just walking. Kids try to do jump ins, some of them jump too much, but that's a habit born from a lot of kids still trying to get anti-airs going. Mini Faust, the Potemkin, and Axel are a bit more intentional with how they move and make space. But even the other kids are still trying to get away and make space sometimes. Learning how to move around the screen definitely is tough for sure. It's funny because when you first learn the game, I feel like most people just jump way too much. So then they like stop jumping. Then they like don't jump enough or know how to use their air movement to stop that. The best players can jump and just not get anti-aired because they are so good at their air mobility. Mochi and Strive is a great example. I don't think air approach in general is that good in Strive compared to other gear games, right? Like the anti-airs are huge. Even still, he makes air movement feel incredibly oppressive. And it's not because he has access to anything else other than just a better, smarter game plan to move around in the air, right? Anti-airs. Every year, I try to do the Sajam thing. Whoa, Sajam reference. And make sure the kids at least know they have an anti-air alongside their pokes. Whenever I learn a character, or whenever I learn a game, all I want to know is like, what do I hit when my opponent is standing across from me on the ground? And what do I hit if they're in the air? And if you have a basic ground combo, basic air, anti-air combo, you can probably get the job done 90% more effectively than if you just don't have either of those things. These barbarians are going to be holding up and jumping at me, and I need to be able to stop it or I'm just going to die. You then force them to not just jump at you over and over, and then now you're just chilling and you can play on the ground a little bit more comfortably. You can do some air stuff, like it just makes everything feel more cohesive. You guys watch me play the Street Fighter 6 beta, make it to Diamond with a bunch of different characters. What did I do with almost every character? I threw fireballs and then I anti-air DP'd when they jump. It works at literally every level of the video game. Sometimes they forget because when their opponent forgets how to jump, you tend to stop thinking about anti-air. However, with the spread of jumping and more varied movement, anti-airs are becoming more relevant than they were before. Sure, it usually only happens after the third or fourth jump in, but that still indicates that they're seeing their game plan not work and try to adjust. Yeah, I think that's also a good lesson. A lot of people will say like, when I block a move, I never punish it right away. I have to block it like 3 or 4 times and then I do the right punish or whatever, right? That's fine, because the fact that you recognize and adjust to it means that in the future, it'll take you 2 or 3 times, 1 or 2 times, and then you'll start doing it on the very first time. You'll just be ready. And you can only build muscle memory by playing the video game and trying stuff. When I block a DP with like Sin, when he first comes out, I'm like, close slash, I guess, instead of doing 6H into a million damage, because I don't remember like, oh yeah, isn't there some combo you can do with 6H? Like, it's in my head, but I'm just not used to it yet, right? It's the same thing from everything. It's going to take you a few tries before you figure it out. The last one is evaluating buttons. Early on, the kids only want 2 things from a button, and it's fucking disgusting. Range and damage. You're spit. They tend to see a button that's fast and stubby that doesn't deal much damage and dump it to the ground. Pokes that are fast but don't go that far are really hard to evaluate for a lot of new players because all they think is like the heaviest button does the most damage. But particularly when movement is so important in games like this, you are fast enough that even if the move doesn't have that much range, you can put yourself in a spot fast enough to hit that button that it doesn't matter. It's like slow, heavy buttons tend to not actually be that good. They cover one space and not anywhere else. And like if they whiff, you're just gonna explode. That's the classic example of like when you first start playing Street Fighter, you only hit heavy punch and heavy kick. It does take a while for that to feel worse because particularly at a low level, most people don't know how to stop that. They're like, this shit's impossible to beat. It's only when someone anti-airs you a bit more and starts to punish your sweeps that you're like, oh. And you're like, wait, I can't do that move on block or I die? What else is there? I guess I'll hit the version one move lighter, the medium kick. It's probably okay, I guess. And then you hit that button and then you're safe and you can cancel it. And you're like, wait a minute. Not only does it go about as far, it does everything my sweep does, but better. Jabs are also really hard to use unless you play Luke or Elena or your character's jabs are really good or you're good at the game. Part of this comes from the fact that Potemkin is so consistently at the top early on. Your fast, stubby 5P isn't going to save you when you need to land 60 of them, and Pot needs to hit you with like 6 times or something with 6 age. Especially when Gatlings are often out of reach, true. Fast, low damage moves are starting to find their place, and solid pokes aren't just bad moves anymore. They still lean heavily on damage and range for evaluating buttons, but they're no longer the beginning and end of the conversation. Oftentimes when I learn new games, I will look at a button and be like, ooh, that button is good. I'll go to the next one, I'll be like, it seems okay. I'm like, ooh, this button seems good. And people ask, like, how do you know what buttons are good or not? And the answer is like, you have just played a lot of fighting games and there are certain categories that buttons fall into. Range, speed, cancel options, safety, like how safe or good they are on block or hit, combo ability, whether they're disjointed, or whether they can be poked from far away. Does it go over lows? Does it beat throws? Like when I hit a button, I can immediately tell like, oh, this button's good. Good examples of unique properties that help moves a lot. 5K for Gold Lewis has something that's really, really, really good. If you look at the hitbox here, right, there is no hurt box. So that knee slapper is just low crushing goodness. Look at this. Like what low is going to hit this? Now, knowing how to use this is a whole other thing because then you have to say, well, this is really good if a character pokes me a lot with lows. Another good example is 2S. A lot of people don't love for a lot of reasons. Like it doesn't always combo and everything. It's completely disjointed at the end here. And he gets a little low to the ground. This is really nice, particularly against characters like Testament and Axel, who want to try to zone him and keep him away, but you can hit the hurt boxes of their moves early because this move is disjointed. There are some things that are obvious with the character, right? Like if you've ever hit his far slash, like you just know this move is good. It's a disjointed, forward advancing 10 frame far slash that leads to a hard knockdown. Like it was probably very obvious. But there are other things about moves that are maybe not obvious when you first hit them. Evaluating buttons and anti-airing movement, all this kind of stuff. Everybody is learning these things when they learn fighting games, but you first of all learn them at different rates. And second of all, mastering them or getting really comfortable with them takes a long time. So many of these kids are probably so much better than when they first started and they don't even realize. All these concepts and ideas are stuff that when you first start playing fighting games, you probably don't know about any of them. And now you're like, oh. It's over for your dumb ass. Are you done pretending to play Guilty Gear? That was about +R, yeah. Somebody who came in and was like, you're not even gonna play this game. Can't wait for you to drop Guilty Gear any minute now. And like, you know, fuck you, right? Was that like 2019 or something? 2020? When was that? It was a long time ago. It's been like 3 years since then. So, you know, I think we're going okay so far.